Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Tuesday. We've got the first game of the Graham Potter era tomorrow night against Red Bull Salzburg in the Champions League at Stamford Bridge. And I thought, like yesterday, this video was mainly just going to be talking about his first press conference and then looking ahead to the game tomorrow, kind of my feelings on a potential team, which is so impossible to predict at this point, and just reflecting on how he did in his first press conference. But then around, 4:30, 4:45, we get these clips coming out of New York of Todd Boehly at a business conference, effectively, speaking about Chelsea, speaking about Thomas Tuchel, the sacking, speaking about a potential multi-club model, the academy, lots of stuff in there that I'm sure a lot of people will want to reflect on and listen to, because, you know, to have someone of Bowley's sort of status, obviously at Chelsea in the new ownership sort of model, speak this frankly about stuff is, you know, it's quite refreshing and quite new for Chelsea fans, I think, to deal with, considering how secretive it was before with the previous regime. So we're going to have to get into some of that stuff, and as well, that very much links into the potential new sporting director, and one name apparently is at an advanced stage, and it does relate to our opponents tomorrow night, so we'll get into that. Before we do, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already and are enjoying the content, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. Also, does me a massive favor as well if you do hit that like button, because it helps new people find the content as well. But let's start off with Graham Potter's press conference. Not going to spend too long on this. Link in the description box below. Please go and watch it. I'm pretty sure most of you have watched Graham Potter's first press conference. It was pretty relaxed. I think that he dealt with the questions well. It's always that different dynamic, you know, the in-house sort of interview he did on Monday that we reflected on yesterday. The questions are maybe a little bit easier. He is being tasked, I guess, with the media of being asked a few more awkward questions, particularly one that I think he dealt with really well in regards to this being a risk, and he sort of referred to it as crossing the road being a risk. And when he left, when he was 30 years old, to go Sweden in the 4th tier, Östersund had sacked, I think, their last 3 or 4 head coaches. So, you know, he's dealt with these situations maybe to a smaller extent before, and I just think all round there was no sort of ambition from him, I think, to throw out any catchphrases or try and make headlines with one sort of statement. Pretty much every single Chelsea coach post Jose in 2004 has had to deal with the special one question. It comes up in every single one. I'm not sure why at this point, because I just think it's a little bit tedious. Jose has that press conference, he will always have that, and I don't understand where there's kind of a pressure or expectation that you're going to get something out of a new head coach. And, you know, but I felt that he dealt with questions like that quite well, and he was also asked questions about sort of taking the role, the human side. He keeps on referring to this as not only how he's going to deal with the players, but also some of the meetings he had with Todd Boehly and the new ownership to kind of convince him of taking this role. And he was also, one of the pieces that I think people picked up on was tomorrow night is going to be his first Champions League game in person, which some people took the mick out of, effectively. You know, if it turns out bad at Chelsea, he has no experience in the Champions League. But, you know, it was a sign of humility, and I felt that he came across well. He comes across as a very honest person, and I think he's also very measured, which you probably need at a chaotic club like Chelsea. So I like that. Just quickly on the game tomorrow, I was asked at Football London for my predicted lineup, which you can read. I think a few of us were, and it's impossible to predict a first, you know, the first game of a new head coach. It's impossible. There's no point in me giving you a predicted team, because pretty much all of us likely are going to be wrong. I'm just intrigued if there are any wild cards in there. If there's a Dennis Zakaria making a surprise debut, if we see one of Christian Pulisic or Hakim Ziyech start, because in the remaining weeks of Tuchel, they felt like kind of fringe figures. Will they get a new chance? You know, some of the younger players, will they suddenly feature? We'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be very intriguing, and just excited for when that team news drops so we can start to break it down. And then, because we've only got one game now, Chelsea game, for the rest of this month, I think we're going to have to dissect it, and hopefully it will be a positive result and performance at the Bridge tomorrow. Let me know your opinions on the game, and of course N'Golo Kante, Edouard Mendy, both out tomorrow. Hopefully both will be back by the time we get to our next game in the Premier League away at Crystal Palace following the international break. But let's move on to Todd Boehly now. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not that shocked, because in the process of, you know, the takeover and the sanctions and listing and sort of researching the people who could have bought Chelsea, Bowley's done this in his career before. You know, there were multiple interviews, and before we do look at the clips, and what he has to say on particularly Tuchel. I think that's the most interesting thing, hearing him address something as contentious and, you know, explosive for sacking Thomas Tuchel in the way he did. You know, it's just something you just wouldn't hear, particularly how close it is to that decision being made. I said this before I think Bowley was even chosen as the preferred bidder and the consortium was. He has clearly thought about buying Chelsea for a very long time. This is not a flippant decision. You can find clips of him speaking about the Premier League and his thoughts on the game and the thoughts of the potential of buying a Premier League club since about 2019. I think maybe even before then he had ideas about this. So this is not a guy that's just rushed into this, which I think some people outside of Chelsea and even people concerned about some of the decisions that have been made recently have tried to paint Todd Boehly as kind of this, and the new owners as kind of just blasé. They're going in, they have no idea about football, they have no care for expertise, and they're just going about spending on players that they have no idea about. You know, the 4-4-3 thing that came out in The Athletic very much plays into this kind of perception, right? But I feel that what we're hearing from Todd Boehly, listen, action is more important than words, but I do think there's been action so far at Chelsea that have encouraged me. Even if the Thomas Tuchel decision is brutal and it is contentious, and we'll have to see how it plays out. A lot of this is long term. It's not just about the next 2 weeks assessing new ownership. It is a long term investment. They've referred to it as kind of a 10-year plan. You know, that's a big thing. So it's a long term thing at Chelsea to judge how they are doing. But I do feel that people should at least listen to what Todd Boehly has to say before making those assumptions. And I think it is clear, at least, whether they're able to implement it successfully at Chelsea. They do have a plan, or at least they do have things that they want to build. And based on what I'd like to see, I think it aligns with my hopes, particularly with the academy. But let's show the clip. This is when he was asked about Thomas Tuchel sacking.
When you take over any business, you just have to make sure that you're aligned with the people who are operating the business. And I think Tuchel is obviously extremely talented and someone who had great success at Chelsea. Our vision for the club was finding a manager who really wanted to collaborate with us, a coach who really wanted to collaborate. You know, I think there's a lot of walls to break down at Chelsea. And, you know, before the first team, for example, in the academy, didn't really share data. They didn't share information about, you know, where the top players were coming from. So our goal is to really bring, you know, a team together that, you know, with the academy, with the first team, with the incremental clubs that we want to acquire and develop, all of that needs to be, you know, a well-oiled machine. And the reality of our decision was that we just weren't sure that Thomas saw it the same way we saw it. And no one's right or wrong. It was just we didn't have a shared vision for the future. And it wasn't about Zagreb. It was really about, you know, the shared vision for what we wanted to Chelsea Football Club to look like. And, you know, it wasn't a decision that was made, you know, as a result of a single win or loss. It was a decision that was made really about what we thought was the right vision for the club.
So it's not too shocking, you know, talking about that alignment very much fills in with everything we've heard since the Thomas Tuchel sacking in terms of them just not seeing eye to eye. I think it shows a faith in Cobham, a faith in the academy, and treating it seriously and seeing it as what I think it is, a gift to any owner and any new owner, that you can have this pathway that isn't just about making the club money on selling these players off. It is a way of saving money in the transfer market, finding internal solutions, finding players who understand the culture of the club. And particularly when Bowley speaks about how people not sharing things at Chelsea, that kind of distance at times between different sections of the club, that's a real problem. And I like the fact that he is operating with that. I don't think that that's a stupid way of going about operating a club. It just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You know, especially if you want that pathway, which is, you know, kind of a tired phrase, but particularly one from Cobham to the first team, if there is that sense that there is a communication going on there and it isn't just distant constantly, which at times it has been guilty of, as we've seen with previous head coaches who didn't give any chances or any looks really in care to Cobham and the academy teams. That's where friction grows, and I like the idea of having that and sharing, as he refers to it, as data, and just that communication. And I think the empowerment of Neil Bath, who's just the best in the world at what he does, I think is such a smart strategy. And lastly, of course, there was this idea of different clubs and Chelsea potentially owning a few other clubs who could be for lack of a better term, feeder clubs. We've seen he references the Red Bull model and he references Manchester City.
Yeah, we're not expecting to be, the football experts to find the best talent. We're going to put those people in place. And I think it's no different than running any human capital business, where it's all about getting the right resources, making them collaborate, getting them organized, thinking about how you have a global business at a local level. So I think we're going to be continuously adding resources. I think we've been talked about having a multi-club model. I would love to continue to build out the footprint. I think that there's different countries where there's advantages to having a club. Red Bull does a really good job. They've got Leipzig and they've got Salzburg, and both of which are playing in Champions League. So they've figured out how to make that work. You have Man City, which has a very big network of clubs. Because I think the challenge that Chelsea has right now, or one of them, is that when you have 18, 19, 20-year-old superstars, you can loan them out to other clubs, but you put their development in someone else's hands, right? So I think that our goal is to make sure we can show pathways for our young superstars to get onto the Chelsea pitch while getting them real game time. And to me, the way to do that is through another club somewhere in a really competitive league in Europe.
I think it is important to have a line of communication, and as well to actually hear what our owners are thinking about key things. And that was part of the distant thing about the previous ownership. You didn't know what Roman Abramovich was thinking about, and I've said this on the channel before. I think a lot of people tried to make out they knew what he was thinking, and the truth is few of us ever did. The only thing you could ever go by was the decisions that were made on, say, head coaches or transfers, and the statements that sometimes would include Roman Abramovich signing off like it was with Lampard, or not. So I think this is a positive, and hopefully you find it interesting. Please go and watch the full thing, but those were some of the key things that were picked out, and I'm sure will be dissected in the coming days. But the fact that he mentions Red Bull Salzburg is interesting because we've got reports today about the potential sporting director role. Ben Jacobs here tweeting that his understanding on Chelsea's new sporting director is talks with Salzburg sporting director Christoph Freund are already pretty advanced. Todd Boehly is a big fan of the Red Bull model. He's currently head of Monaco's Paul Mitchell, who really wants the job too. Luis Campos was someone who has been linked today. I know French reports were claiming that Chelsea have offered him a big contract. Apparently he's an option and is technically freelance, but protection clauses in his PSG contract make a move tough unless he buys out the remainder of his contract at PSG. And he also says, I am told at this stage Freund is very much leading the race, which adds a little spice to Wednesday's Champions League game. Graham Potter's input is still key, and Chelsea could also hire a technical director too. So this is moving pretty fast. I think it's good. We need that structure to kind of eliminate that feeling of chaos, and you'd probably see Todd Boehly take a backward step. We wouldn't see any more clips of him having wonderful meals in Barcelona, although the memes from that were quite funny. And listen, it's quite clear that Bowley admires the Red Bull model. He likes it. That's why he's speaking about the multi-club sort of model that Chelsea could pursue in the coming years. I really like Paul Mitchell. I suggest people go and watch an interview with him that he did with Sky Sports over the summer. Really insightful. Luis Campos is another one there. We had Michael Edwards, but that's unrealistic. He wants to take a year out the game, and it's maybe quite clear now that Chelsea are not willing to wait that long to get their sporting director in. They want to start having this structure implemented, particularly with giving Potter that 5-year deal. To have that certainty, to have that structure, to have that clarity I think is so important for Chelsea moving forward, particularly as we move into the next transfer window. And we've just spent a lot in the transfer window, and you don't want to be doing that every single window. You shouldn't have to. Something's gone very wrong if you have. So important, and hopefully this gets done pretty soon and we have some clarity, and Chelsea, that new model, that new structure, because we have had a lot of people leave, along with Potter coming in with his recruitment analyst Carl McCauley, who I think is going to be a very important person, who Potter was asked about in today's press conference. So let me know your opinions on this. Are you excited to see who is appointed? Let me know in the comments below. But that is it for today's edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.